Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 700 Club. U.S. and Russian officials are in a bid to end the war in Ukraine. Delegations met in Saudi Arabia today to work out a path for peace talks.
Moscow and Washington are also aiming to renew a relationship that's become tense. Plans include a potential summit between Presidents Trump and Putin. Senior Washington correspondent Tara Mergener tells us more.
It's a high-stakes meeting with potential global impact. For the first time since the war began, U.S. and Russian officials are sitting down face-to-face, hoping to find common ground and possibly a path to peace.
U.S. and Russian officials meet in Saudi Arabia for their most extensive discussions in years. This as President Trump pushes to end the war in Ukraine, and both sides seek to warm up their frosty relationship. Secretary Marco Rubio with National Security Advisor Michael Waltz and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff announced the main objectives.
We're going to appoint our teams respectively to work very quickly to reestablish the functionality of our respective missions in Washington and in Moscow. For us to be able to continue to move down this road, we need to have diplomatic facilities that are operating and functioning normally. The second point is that we're going to appoint a high-level team from our end to help negotiate and work through the end of the conflict in Ukraine in a way that's enduring and acceptable to all the parties engaged.
I think as a discussion today with the U.S. team are very important, and we've been consistently saying that good U.S.-Russia relations are very important for the whole world.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio, joined by top national security officials, aims to lay the groundwork for a future meeting between President Trump and Vladimir Putin. These talks follow a phone conversation last week lasting 90 minutes.
Moving along, we're trying to get a peace with Russia and Ukraine, and we're working very hard on it. It's a war that should have never started.
Absent from the discussions are U.S. allies in Europe and Ukraine. Ukrainian President Zelensky is expected to visit Saudi Arabia tomorrow, but says he has not been invited to the talks. Zelensky's made it clear that Ukraine will not recognize any agreements made without its participation.
Maybe there is something at the table, but not on our table.
Zelensky also warning President Trump in a recent phone call that Putin cannot be trusted. The U.S.-Russia dialogue has sent shockwaves across Europe, prompting leaders to gather in Paris for an emergency summit to plan their response.
I think the most important thing about this meeting tonight is the need for all of us to step up when it comes to our spendings on defense. Russia is not only a threat against Ukraine, but all of us. So we need to scale up, and we need to speed up, and to do that we need also a discussion in the European Union about the fiscal rules.
The Trump administration's decision to engage in these talks represents a significant shift in long-standing U.S. foreign policy, not only in Europe, but also in the Middle East. Yesterday, Rubio met with the Saudi Crown Prince to promote President Trump's idea of a U.S.-controlled Gaza Strip. In Washington, I'm Tara Mergener, CBN News.
What an absolutely fascinating geopolitical situation we have here with enormous consequences. U.S. and Russia speaking within a month of Trump taking office. European nations saying they're being sidelined. Zelensky and Ukraine not invited to the talks. Doesn't seem to do much for their negotiating power. And Marco Rubio is going to act with great political savvy and authority. He is walking a very fine line. We'll see what develops this week. In other news, a miracle in Toronto after a Delta jet flipped over on landing. Everyone survived. Gary Lane has that story and more from the CBN newsroom. Gary?
The accident that happened yesterday afternoon at Toronto's Pearson International Airport. A Delta flight from Minneapolis carrying 80 passengers flipped over on landing. Despite the shocking scene, there were no fatalities. These images recorded by passenger John Nelson show the jet on its back with its wings broken off and smoke coming from the fuselage.
Toronto, we just landed. Our plane crashed. It's upside down. Fire department's on site.
Emergency crews rescuing the passengers who had to unbuckle their seatbelts and drop to the floor, which was actually the ceiling. At least 17 people, including a baby, were taken to the hospital with injuries. Well, turning now to the Middle East, a U.S. Senate delegation in Israel is warning that Iran poses a major threat to the world as it pushes to develop nuclear bombs. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham said the Trump administration can try economic and diplomatic means to force Iran to abandon its nuclear goals, or the U.S. can end that threat permanently.
A military path where we help Israel deliver a decisive blow against Iran's nuclear infrastructure, I prefer that path.
Meanwhile, the uneasy ceasefire with Hamas is holding. The terror group is set to hand over the bodies of 4 murdered hostages on Thursday. There are reports that Hamas may release the 6 remaining live hostages, due to be freed in phase 1 of the deal, this Saturday instead of over the next 2 weeks. After that, 4 more bodies and 3 live hostages are due to be returned before phase 1 ends in early March. Israel's Iron Dome has amazed the world. The missile defense system has intercepted thousands of missiles and rockets launched by Iran and its proxies. Now, President Trump is calling for an American version of the Iron Dome. The Pentagon scrambling to create a strategy to make it happen. National security correspondent Caitlin Burke reports.
Under a new executive order from President Trump, the Pentagon now has less than 60 days to come up with an initial plan for defending the country against a wide range of missile attacks.
We protect other countries, but we don't protect ourselves. And when Ronald Reagan wanted to do it many years ago, luckily we didn't. We didn't have the technology then. It was a concept, but we didn't. And now we have phenomenal technology.
The order focuses on potential threats including ballistic, hypersonic, and advanced cruise missiles, plus other next-generation aerial attacks. Trump also specified the need for deploying new space-based sensors that would identify, track, and intercept missiles.
Given the advance that hypersonic missiles and sophisticated cruise missiles that Russia has aspirations of that can circumnavigate the globe, these are fundamentally objectives that are worthy of conceptual study and also deployment.
Deterrence is one of the primary goals of the American Iron Dome, a missile defense system that would make enemies question whether their first strike could hit its mark.
What we're seeing now is because of the proliferation of threats, and it's everything from a drone to an ICBM, you have both state actors who are armed with these things, to include Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, all of whom have threatened the United States in different ways, and then non-state actors, terrorist groups, drug cartels, who can also have some weapons that we need defenses for. So I think this is going to be quite a comprehensive system.
While costs would likely be one of the biggest roadblocks, several Republican lawmakers are already working on a funding package, and Victoria Coates, a former deputy national security advisor during Trump's first term, points out that freeing up money for projects like this is a big benefit of the work being done by Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency.
We have to save money everywhere we can and put it towards what is vitally important. And so those will be, our social programs, Medicaid, Medicare, that kind of thing, but then also into our defenses.
The Missile Defense Agency hopes to complete an initial phase by December of 2026, and then at least 3 more phases would follow in 2-year intervals. This month, the Pentagon plans to assess current tech capability with industry leaders. President Trump calling for all the components of this defense shield to be American-made. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
Andrew, 40 years ago, I reported on Ronald Reagan's Strategic Defense Initiative. That was called Star Wars. That contributed to bringing down the Soviet Union, our insistence on that. So here we are, 2025, a more contemporary version.
All right, Gary, here we are again. And this is welcome news to many Americans who think we have been naive and complacent when it comes to our security, and that the money is there if we can reallocate some wasteful spending going on. I don't know if you've ever had a boss that you think makes big demands. The Trump administration giving these guys a couple months to come up with a plan for an Iron Dome. I have a feeling Israel will be getting a lot of calls from the United States in the next few weeks, Terry.
Some of us are surprised we don't have
Already
one.
have.
Yeah.